Friday. Yeah. We are now a week away from the morning after. The dust will have settled well by this time next week, and I don't know. There will be a few things to decide as to when the New Democrats will officially hold their leadership convention. Perhaps the same thing. Will there be a by-election for Stephen Del Duca? That's going to be an interesting thing, eh? All the Liberals finally getting their seats back in the legislature, and then somebody's going to have to put their hand up and say, okay, yeah, no, I'll give up my seat to the leader. I'm just spitballing here. Dave Trafford, it is the Writ Race, the daily edition of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics podcast for Story Studio Network. Joined this morning by Keith Leslie, and you see him and hear him on CHTV in Hamilton. You still writing for the paper in Hamilton?
Spectator? No, stopped that in the middle of last year. So
yeah.
Just CHCH these days, and
just
some radio friends, of course.
Yeah, right. Well, it's funny. I was on John Moore's show this morning doing the roundtable, and all the buzz was front page of the Toronto Star, this big expose around another leaked memo to the Star, this time from the NDP. And the headline reads something to the effect, the internal memo in the polling suggests that the NDP has their wind at their back. So if I've got this straight, the top three parties have all passed wind theories in the Star's general direction during the campaign. Right?
Wind passing might be a good way to describe it.
That was like a good fart joke on Friday, but I mean, maybe that wasn't even a good fart joke. But that's what it's come down to.
I thought the best summation I've seen of all these stories was a Conservative insider, backroom person who I know has worked on many campaigns for the Conservatives, and he just said
knows a thing or two about
about how these campaigns are run, and made the point that we don't write internal memos to each other during election campagns.
Because we can make eye contact. We're in the room.
We're talking all day, morning to night, every event. So these are party spin, and each party seems to have some wind in its sails as we're heading into the final days of the campaign. And that's to be expected. I mean, sometimes I suspect that these sort of internal polls were better leaked to staffers, to party volunteers, to boost them up, to leak into the media. When I was a reporter full-time at Queen's Park, I often would just use these things in a broader sense of the party's internal polling shows that they think they can win a huge number or bank some gains, but the other party's polling shows that's not happening, or the public. You counter it. You don't just go with their internal polling shows they're going to win. The Conservatives are going to win 80 seats. Well, no. Those kind of projections are just they're wishful thinking by the party's internal workers. This is what they want to believe. And I guess there's some best case scenario situations here, but those things, they're not just taken with a huge grain of salt. I mean, you just drive the salt truck right up here and dump it all in.
Well, the whole issue, and you point that out, that this started with I think it was the Tories first. They were the ones that leaked something to the Star, but they were throwing around numbers like, well, we're going to win 80 seats, and like very specific. I mean, again, I'd be a little leery of that. God love Rob Benzie and the folks at the Star, but when I saw this last night on Twitter, I'm thinking, so when did the Toronto Star become sort of the exclusive repository for brown envelopes as far as internal polling is concerned?
Well, this is to make it a 3-day rolling story with each party seems a bit much. If you get the one, maybe then approach the others and see if you can get their part. And as I say, roll them all together into one yarn, aggregate what they're all saying here and say, coincidentally, it seems that each party's internal polling shows each party's doing really well, or has the momentum heading into election day or whatever. So, as I say, huge grain of salt, but there's just a general lack of interest in this campaign. So to try and generate stories, get some breaking news to see if here's what's really happening. There is some momentum. The NDP are holding on to official opposition. They have room they could perhaps close in on the Tories. We're not hearing that. We're not seeing that. We're just showing each party's polling is showing this. And the Conservatives' internal polling appears to be showing them just, walking on water right to victory on June the 2nd. So let's take it all a step back, because the overall polling still shows that the Conservatives, while yes, they're a comfortable lead, they're under 40%. And it's hard to get a majority. I know it can be done, but it's hard to get a majority with less than 40%, especially with Conservatives. The NDP and the Liberals still battling it out for second. The NDP do appear to have, they say, some momentum. I don't know. The Liberals, seems visually that the Liberals have a little bit more momentum, or a little bit, Del Duca's catching on a little bit more. But in the end, they're still battling it out for second place, and they're fighting each other for the same votes, and they're still sniping at each other. This picking, and of course it ends up with the Liberals lost another candidate. They're now down 3. This one in Chatham, Kent, Leamington. And this was one where the Liberals themselves had booted out their candidate after someone dug up the fact that their previous candidate had said something homophobic online when they were a teenager or whatever. So they brought in this new candidate, and somehow magically the same signatures that they need 25 local signatures to become a candidate to send to Elections Ontario.
Yep.
The same signatures were used on the new candidate, and the NDP made a complaint to Elections Ontario and then pointed this out. So the candidate yesterday quit. And she and Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca accused the New Democrats and Andrea Horwath of sexism for attacking her daily about this paperwork thing. And
because
forcing
it's
her
such
to
a
quit.
feminist issue.
Because it's a huge feminist issue. The Liberal Party did this woman wrong by not getting the paperwork done. You couldn't get 25 signatures. I don't care if you need an hour. If you're the Liberal Party of Ontario, you can't go out in an area and get 25 signatures that day to put on. Someone messed up the paperwork badly. That's where the issue is here. For the New Democrats to make a complaint, Del Duca, who didn't defend the action at all, but he basically said was, well, yeah, okay, you complain to Elections Ontario, but you don't go public about it. Really? In the middle of the election campaign, you're accusing the NDP of being sexist for going public with their apparently extremely legitimate complaint, because people have tracked down some of those signatures, and they said, no, I didn't sign for her. I signed for the previous candidate. So there's clearly an issue. The candidate was probably going to have trouble with Elections Ontario. Their name will still be on the ballot next week, so any votes for that Liberal candidate in Chatham, Kent, Leamington will be a spoiled ballot. Mm-hmm. But still, this is the Liberals and New Democrats going at each other, bringing in sexism for what essentially is a Liberal Party paperwork screw-up, and a massive one at that. They should have, for bad vetting of their previous candidate, a screw-up on this one, and somehow this is the New Democrats' fault, and Andrea Horwath is a sexist. That's some Liberal war room horseshit there is what that is.
No question. Angus Reid in the inbox this morning at about 15-20 minutes ago, their latest on what's going on here in Ontario. And horse races, pretty much reflects what everybody else is doing. But there's a couple of numbers here just want to throw out that really, I think, get at the heart of the matter. Thinking specifically about creating new jobs for Ontarians, which of the following leaders do you think is best suited to handle this? Who do you think finishes second?
Best to create new jobs?
Yeah.
Del Duca.
Nope. Not sure. 26%. Not kidding. I'm serious. It's crazy.
I would have thought, the PCs, because they're clearly building everything and anything. And then I would have thought that, the second most likely to form government could be the Liberals, and the NDP aren't known for this, so let's go Liberal. No, not sure. So the economic message from the three opposition parties, again, is not really hitting home like it should, is it?
Yeah.
If it's all on Doug Ford or nobody,
that's right,
for getting us jobs, boy, what's that tell you heading into Election Day?
How's about this one? What about making your life more affordable? Thinking about making your life more affordable, which of the following leaders do you think is best suited to handle this? Any thoughts on who finished second?
I'm going to go with Mike Schreiner. Just... No, not sure.
Tied for second is not sure.
So, by these metrics, Ford is walking away with stuff.
No question.
And that's not just his base, as they like to say. There's those numbers, that's showing a lot of Ontarians are just looking at this. Those other leaders are not connecting, or their messages are not connecting. Whatever it is, Ford's message is connecting, which is why they're keeping away from the public, and it is, very limited availability. it's because what they're doing is working.
Yeah, it's insane. When they start to look at, that deep. I mean, I think that's really kind of at the heart of what's going to drive people to the polls, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but in the conversations I've had, I said, man, I don't know that I'd be proud of any of them. And that actually shows up. They're all in negative territory. There's nobody who has any astounding number when asked, which of these candidates would make you proud as premier? Nah, we're not there. So
what I found interesting was the stat of which of these four leaders has actually, your public perception of them since the election started. And they've all gone down except for Schreiner.
Yeah. Well, even
Ford went down.
You looked at since the election was officially called this month, which would you say your opinion of each of the following has improved, stayed the same, or worsened? Progressive Conservatives minus 18, Liberals minus 15, NDP minus 13, Greens up 10. Right?
That's what getting in the first debate and sounding reasoned will do for you.
Right.
And what I really noted during the debate, especially, which was the first time most people will have seen Green leader Mike Schreiner, certainly the first time they will have seen him in a province-wide debate like that. And he not only was really good at holding Doug Ford to account and, trying to calm the others down when they were all talking over each other, he just came across as the most reasoned of them all. And they all started reflecting that. Even Doug Ford looking at Mike Schreiner during the debate and saying, I can work with you, Mike. Tell those other guys, why is I can work with you? They were all pledging they can work with Schreiner. So I'm not surprised that once people saw him and saw his reasoned approach to things and realized that the Greens are not just about the environment. Their economic policies are very solid, and they're very much a small business-oriented party from that perspective. People don't realize that. So once people get to know them and hear them more, I'm not surprised Schreiner went up. But, of course, it's easy to go up when you're in that position when people know he's not going to become premier on June 2nd, although he has a good chance, apparently, of winning a second seat in Parry Sound Muskoka.
I heard Deb Hutton on the radio this morning, and Deb worked for, two fairly more conservative premiers than Doug Ford, right? Ernie Eves and Mike Harris.
And she was married to another conservative.
Right. And certainly, so talking about that this morning and her looking at Parry Sound Muskoka thinking, yeah, Mike's got a chance at doubling his seats there. And Deb, she doesn't throw that stuff around lightly.
No. Parry Sound Muskoka, it's always viewed as a conservative stronghold. Well, sure, Norm Miller held it for, I don't know how many decades, near 20 years at least. And his dad held it before him. His dad was premier. They were very, very popular in that riding, well liked. But the dynamics have changed so much. Norm Miller is not running for re-election. They've got a popular mayor running, but the Liberals lost their candidate there again through bad vetting. This was the one who came up with the book on the babies breathing their own air, turns them gay or something. Anyway, he's out. So the Liberals have no candidate in that riding. So all of a sudden the dynamics have changed. The Miller family is not running a candidate. The Liberals have no candidate. So it's wide open, and the votes there, people that really have been voting Green, those 5% have been voting Green consistently for years. It's rare other than in Guelph that they're going to elect someone. They're voting only because they're voting with their heart, their conscience. This is what they firmly believe in. Now, in Parry Sound Muskoka, a vote for Green could be a vote for an opposition member. Very well could be. And again, if this is a minority parliament, who's going to have the balance of power? Not the NDP or the Liberals. They're going to still be fighting at each other. It's going to be those Green 1 or 2 seats could be the balance of power. So the people in Parry Sound Muskoka have a real chance to make history here. And from a percentage point of view, doubling your seat count looks pretty good on Schreiner.
So here's the next number. Based on putting party preferences aside, which of the main political party leaders do you think would be the best premier of Ontario? Any thoughts on who finished second?
Not sure.
Not sure who finished second? Well, close. It was not sure finished third by 1 point. 20% said not sure. Horwath was 21%, second to Ford at 35%. Here's the interesting number. Del Duca, 12%, Schreiner, 12%.
Wow.
Right.
So for the two men who are, running, were not known until this campaign, essentially. Schreiner was known in Guelph, and Del Duca was known as a cabinet minister, but outside their own little areas, really not known. What does that tell you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That, I mean, Del Duca's leading a party that should, in all rights, have a chance of not just becoming opposition, in most elections has a chance of forming a government. And he's tied with the Green Party leader who has zero chance of that.
Right.
Somebody's message isn't connecting.
Well, I think these numbers are actually, as John Wright would put it, this is really kind of getting, I think, at the pulse of what we're going to see a week from now in terms of final results. This is what's driving the vote. And off the top, I'm saying, sort of half joking, about the logistics of the leadership conferences for both the Liberals, maybe the Liberals, and certainly the NDP. But what's going to be critical, I think you're going to see a really low turnout here.
Oh, it sure looks like it. And we know the low turnout favors the Conservatives, which is why they're playing that peekaboo type campaign, keeping Ford out of trouble as much as possible. I was just watching this morning, Andrea Horwath was on the CP24 breakfast television, breakfast with the candidates, or breakfast with the leaders, and they announced when Del Duca would be on and Mike Schreiner would be on, and of course that Premier Ford had declined during an election campaign. It's just stunning that they feel that just sitting on the lead, sitting so comfortably on the lead, and not just not taking any risk whatsoever. What's the risk in appearing on breakfast television?
But and we've talked about this for the last 2-3 weeks now. The only people who really worry about it are guys like us. I don't know anybody who's saying, where the hell's the Premier, except for, guys like Sean O'Shea.
True enough, and as you've rightly pointed out, Doug Ford's the only one who's not going to be facing a leadership review or even perhaps, as Del Duca a by-election after June 2nd. So that's the thing. Del Duca automatically faces a leadership review, but of course, if he doesn't win his own seat, will someone step aside for him?
Won't that be an interesting meeting?
Won't that be an interesting? Right. Or will it be? You know what, Steve? We're going to have the leadership review first. Yeah, and then we'll discuss whether we think someone should step aside or one of the people that won as an MPP should actually become the leader.
Right. I'd be curious to know how Jeff Lehman's doing.
Apparently it's close, but he seems to be the New Democrats put out something, or was it the Conservatives, that Lehman is differing from the leader on 413.
Yeah, if you listen to the whole thing, he's not really.
I know, but the Liberals are seen to be splitting hairs and wishy-washy on, whereas Ford's, pretty straight up and clear. We're going to build it. We're going to do it. We're going to pave it. We're going to cover it over. We're going to, heck, we'll double lane it. So Lehman is, he's a popular mayor.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. I can't read these things. When you get to that community level and you've got someone as popular as a mayor, it's the same up in Paris, Muskoka. You've got a popular mayor up there as well, who's running as a Conservative candidate. Yeah. So these guys could carry the ball, but, for their respective parties, but who knows? I mean, these are interesting and times for change. I mean, on the local level, it seems we're going to be staying with the government like we have on the provincial level. But on a local level, there's lots of fights where there's room for change and some really, really close fights, and something like 8 ridings last time that were won by less than 1%. So there's absolutely lots to still happen and lots that still matters between now and next Thursday. And not just the barrage of election ads that are really going to just...
Oh, they're sickening. Bring on the betting ads. I'd rather see those.
Oh, no. Take a bet on that. Which would you rather see?
So, and again, back to Angus Reid this morning, and I'm just flipping through this as we're talking. It just came in a little while ago. This is an interesting one. Voter intention among decided voters. So these people have already made up their minds. And it's breakdown by region. The Conservatives lead in every region. So 905 Southwest, other regions, they're leading. With the one exception, in 416, they are tied with the Liberals at 32%, which kind of surprises me a little.
It's those Scarborough ridings. They're going to...
you think? Yeah.
They're in play. Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
For sure they are. Yeah.
And
Mitzi Hunter only won by, This many votes, right?
This is and you know, the Fords, the premier and his brother before him paid attention to Scarborough, and people remember these things. This is where the Ford Nation can turn out to be really, really strong and play an actual role. One thing I found interesting, that while the number of undecided still seems fairly high, the experts say that they're not all going to break one way or another. They're going to break just the way the rest of the polling does for the most part. So if you take them out, you're looking at where the polling actually stands at this point. The people aren't undecided because they don't know, or they're undecided because they haven't really paid any attention, or they, quite frankly, don't care. Which is sad, but let's face it, that's the honest approach to it. The undecideds, I think at this point, there's not going to be much to change your mind between now and then, unless it's an election ad, and that's just going to be likely to turn you off, all of them, and drive you to the betting. No, it's not going to drive you to those people either, I don't think. I think those ads are...
You're going to be looking for the not sure on the ballot.
One thing, a little interesting thing, or an event that happened at the Ford rally at the Hamilton airport last night. They arrested this protester. Well, she's not a protester. I think she's more of a documentarian. And I hope I don't mess up her name. It's Karima Saad, I think is how it's
I heard
pronounced.
her on John Moore's show this morning.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
And so some call her a journalist. She's a lawyer who happens to be a documentarian. Certainly she was all over, the occupation in Ottawa, and she goes to all the freedom protests every weekend. She hounds and chases those people down and videos them and puts them on. She's, I think, pretty clearly, anti-conservative. But she had an invite for this thing at the Ford rally.
She registered with her own name, so they knew who they were allowing in.
They knew who they were, yeah. And it's not like she was standing outside with a yardarm and a noose hanging from it, which the guy in BC did, and he proudly was able to post that on pictures afterward because they canceled the Prime Minister's event. They didn't arrest that guy. But they arrest her for what? Having her video camera there?
They cuffed her.
I know. I saw the video. They literally cuffed her, and she said, I'm being arrested for, I guess, political dissent. And shut up. What the heck? Come on. First of all, what's she going to do? Post some nasty things about you on Twitter? Mm-hmm. That's about as...
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Is she the only one doing that? No, I don't think so. But again, the Hamilton police. How many times now are we going to get into this with that particular police force? Remember the global cameraman they arrested? That they finally had to apologize for in the end. This kind of... When I started reporting, and admittedly, it was in the previous epoch, in the late 70s. Part of my job every morning before I went to college was to go 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. to the Hamilton police station and report back for CKOC. And the police didn't brief us until 7:30 in the morning. But I was able to go in at 6 a.m. and get stuff back. The station was doing newscasts from 6 a.m. on. Mm-hmm. And I would go up to the sergeant's desk, and there were two stacks of papers there. One would be arrest sheets and one would be occurrence sheets. And I would just wave and say hi. And then I was allowed to flip through all the arrest sheets and all the occurrence sheets, which were shit happened, but no one got arrested, and go in and fold them into the station. Like no one overseeing, telling you can't do this, you can't do that. And then, as I say, at 7:30, one of the guys would come down, the sergeant, and brief me and the other media that were there. And even in those days, there would be like 6 of us. Imagine there'd probably be one lone poor bugger there now. But they came down.
There's no newsroom at the other end to take the call, though.
Well, but in any event, they were so cooperative with the media, and it was just like it was almost. I was surprised at how open. I was really, really surprised at how open and polite, and they treated us as not colleagues, but with a little bit of respect.
Respect, for sure.
Yeah. Just we had a job, they had a job. Everyone, made that. We all had to communicate together to some degree. To the public, so they worked with us, and to see this turn around, and they're arresting this woman for protesting. Mm-hmm. And again, she wasn't. I don't even think she was protesting. She's just videoing, and she videos herself making comments like, "Look at these people." It's they believe what they're saying. She doesn't. She lets people hang themselves with their own words, from what I've seen of her work. So what on earth they were afraid of? I just don't to arrest someone that high profile at a Ford rally. Why?
It just strikes at such a weird chord, at any time, but especially when the Conservatives are running this really quiet, no waves, no ripple campaign. Yeah. And the only thing that we'll remember is what happened outside TVO and now in Hamilton, right?
Yeah, the nurses got manhandled outside TVO and just outside the debate. They're well, that's what protesters do. This is what elections are for. I remember again, I will show my age, the 1985 election. After Bill Davis retired, the Davis genius was, before he retired, he convinced Bob Ray and David Peterson, let's extend that full funding to Catholic schools. Okay, let's all three of us agree on that. And they did. And they went, okay, I'm out of here. See ya. And so in that 85 campaign, it didn't matter which campaign bus you were on. There were protesters there to meet you because they had nowhere else to go. There was no voice for the people that didn't want to see that full funding extended for grades 11 and 12 of Catholic schools. There's some history for people who aren't aware of it. Yeah. But so Davis was genius in doing that, but people had a right to protest, and they did protest all three campaigns. And I know protesting, some people take it too far at times, but that's why there's security people. And these are good security people. The same security people, a lot of campaigns, they've grown with it. To see people getting manhandled to the degree, we never used to see that. The police used to, at best, they would, make sure the protesters stayed away from each other if it was possible. But they often, let the candidate get near the protester, especially if the candidate wanted to. People were allowed to make their point without being handcuffed and taken away. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, that story ain't over, so that'll be one of those things we'll follow. Listen, have a great weekend. It's good of you to join us, and I'm sure we'll find something to talk about next week.
Well, there's got to be something happening.
Towards Election Day. Very good. Keith Leslie at CHTV. I'm Dave Trafford. This is the Writ Race. It's the daily edition of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics podcast for Story Studio Network.